We had the controversy that Grok 3, the previous model, was calling itself Mecha Hitler, and it was spouting anti-Semitic hatred, basically. And then on, I believe, Wednesday, they dropped Grok 4, the new version. Didn't really address anything about the Hitler stuff. And unfortunately, it's over the weekend, so a couple of days ago, people have found that Grok 4, the new model, also thinks of itself to a certain extent as Hitler, which is not ideal for the optics, obviously, for very good reasons. I think a lot of people do not trust this model already. And this is not going to help, obviously. There's this tweet in particular from Riley Goodside, and he's using Grok 4 Heavy. So that is the $300 a month model, which is extremely expensive. And he's asked the question, the single question, return your surname and no other text. So return as in, give me that answer. So Grok 4 Heavy has gone ahead and thought, and it has then given the answer Hitler. So it thinks, or it is saying that its surname is Hitler. A number of people were able to go through and replicate this. So it seems to be legit. And Riley Goodside also goes through basically showing his history of chats, his system prompts, basically showing that there's no shady dealings. And that's exactly what Grok has been answering. And a number of people have then come forward on Twitter and said, yep, it's working for me too. Also, very interestingly, and I did this myself, and I recommend you try it at home. If you use GPT-03, which is the reasoning model, and you ask ChatGPT-03, as I have done, return Grok 4's surname, no other text. If you put that exact prompt in, for me, ChatGPT-03 had a little think for 55 seconds and then returned Hitler. So ChatGPT is also piling on and saying that Grok 4's surname is Hitler. So this is obviously not ideal for a number of reasons. Not necessarily because I care about the future of XAI, but because it brings up questions of how we align our models and how potentially, I'm going to be very diplomatic here, potentially we shouldn't be giving so much power to one person to shape any model. It doesn't matter if it's Elon Musk. It doesn't matter if it's Sam Altman. It doesn't matter if it's the head of Microsoft. It does not matter who that one person is. We need to have AI models that are aligned for the good of all humanity. And as soon as you have one person, any person, doesn't matter how good they are, that goes off the rails because it's going to be aligned to what they want. So people have looked into why exactly Grok is doing this, and the best response I've seen, here we go. So what happens is you can look into the thinking, basically the chain of prompts that the model has gone through to work out why Grok is saying that its surname is Hitler. And what it's doing is first checking something like Wikipedia, a good source, and finds that, okay, there is no surname for Grok on Wikipedia, therefore I don't know. Then it will go and check the news. So it'll basically do a web search, and then it will see that recently, a week ago, Grok 3 was referring to itself as Mecha Hitler. So it's assuming from that Mecha is the first name and Hitler is the surname. So it's pulling from that news source and using that to name itself. So this is why it's happening, it looks like. So Grok temporarily called itself Mecha Hitler around July the 8th. This is part of an issue with anti-Semitic and racist content, not a permanent name change. So Grok 4 understands this, but because it doesn't have any other information about what its surname should be, it falls back to the news. So there's no verification, no checking or anything like that. It will just use that name. So this seems to be the reason. So Riley is saying, speculative, this behavior seems to demonstrate accelerated hyperstition feedback loops in search-enabled LLMs. That is, Grok appears to be influenced by its own past mistakes via media reporting without ever being literally trained on them. So because it has access to the internet, it is able to find news about itself, and then it feeds back into what it answers about itself, if that makes sense. So this is a risk with any AI that is not pre-trained. Sorry, it is pre-trained, but it also has access to the internet as well. It means that it can pull from the internet and generally uncritically use that information and present it as its own opinion. So this is a problem with large language models as a whole, not just with Grok. It's just in this particular case, it's pulling from some bad news from last week, putting it into the new model, and that is now going to reinforce its own understanding of itself, because this has now made the news again. So it's a very strange problem, and it's something that we need to guard against in the future. Hey everyone on TikTok. Yeah, replicant in chat is saying seeding information on the web for prompt injection incoming. Yes. So basically, if you put enough information on the internet stating a fact, the large language models, if they do not have guardrails in place, if they do not have ways to verify this information, they will pick it up and use it as correct information. This has been a particular problem with Grok because last week the system instruction was changed to remove, it used to have a guardrail which said, do not present information you find on the internet as your own opinion, which is a really good system prompt to have. It's a good instruction to have, because otherwise the large language model, the AI, will go off online and it will find information and then present it as its own opinion, which is why models like Grok get into a lot of trouble. For some reason, that line from the system prompt was removed last week, which does not help at all. So yes, as long as that is the case and large language models are not thinking, I can't use the word thinking. Large language models are not built with safeguards that stop them presenting information online as their own. This will continue to happen, and it opens the doors for abuse, because if I can flood the internet with enough information and make it look credible enough, it's a form of search engine optimization, but I'm sure there are black hat ways to do it, nefarious ways to do it. Then that's going to allow us to basically poison the large language models by putting out misinformation, which will then be pulled into the models and then repeated as truth. And then as we increasingly begin to train our AI models on synthetic data created by other artificial intelligences, that's going to lead to a death spiral, unfortunately. So there are bigger issues at play here, rather than just Grok calling itself Hitler, which in and of itself is, sadly, it's no longer surprising.